Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Today we have a special guest here in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Before I bring her on, if you're new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and bell notification icon to stay up to date for more interviews and weekly podcasts coming your way. Without further ado, my next guest, I'm sure plenty of you have heard of her. Her name is Dr. Judith Orloff. Dr. Judith Orloff is a psychiatrist, empath, and author of the upcoming book, The Genius of Empathy, that has had a foreword by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Her new book offers powerful skills and tools to tap into empathy, as well as a daily practice to implement into your life, as well as into your own relationships. Dr. Judith Orloff also wrote books such as The Empath Survival Guide, as well as Thriving as an Empath. She is a New York Times bestselling author and a UCLA faculty member. Dr. Judith Orloff synthesizes the pearls of conventional medicine with cutting edge knowledge of intuition, energy, and spirituality. Dr. Judith Orloff specializes in treating highly sensitive people in a private practice. She has been on places such as The Today Show, CNN, and featured in Oprah Magazine, as well as the New York Times. So, for any empaths, I highly recommend checking out her website at drjudithorloff.com. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Judith Orloff here on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder to talk all things empathy and empaths. Dr. Judith Orloff, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you here as a guest here on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. How are you doing?
Thank you, Jacob. I'm really excited about talking to you.
I am super excited. You have a brand new book coming out, I think in early April, April 9th to be specific, called The Genius of Empathy. And it has a foreword written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama as well. Certainly as a child, on a personal basis, your work has influenced, my work as a therapist, and you were totally groundbreaking at the time. So I kudos to you for just continuing to write and to give messages out there and to inspire and enlighten so many readers throughout the world. But for viewers who are interested in the genius of empathy, could you tell us a little bit about the book? What's in there? Because you have given so much in so many of your books, but tell us, how does this book maybe differentiate itself?
Yeah, well, I thought about why I wanted to write this book. And if you take a look and intuit what's going on in the world and just see on the surface what's going on in the world, I think to myself, what does the world need most? I mean, apart from love, of course, but we need to have empathy for ourselves, for others, to um, deepen our relationships, to deepen our relationships with ourself, including self-empathy, and also to begin to find another way other than polarizing with so-called enemies. We need to, I started the book with a quote by Rumi,
Oh,
out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. And that's what I want this book to be. I want it to be the field. I don't want it to be right or wrong. I want it to be a new field to start over again.
I love every word you just said, because I know personally and professionally when I try to experiment, interactions that I have with people that I may or may not disagree with, I know from my own firsthand if I'm, you know, doing my checklist and my empathy levels are there and I'm just feeling connected, we're able to have a lot more space and dialogue and less burnout and, compassion fatigue. But, for those viewers who, and certainly in our world the last couple of years, those embers of divisiveness has really intensified. So for viewers listening and watching, how could we develop empathy, with someone that we may not agree with? How could we develop that space? And why is that so important, would you say?
Yes, well, I'm presenting empathy as a healing force. So when you tap into it through the power of the heart, it can help heal your body. It can
Mm,
help your relationships. and it could get transmitted out to the world to create an energetic atmosphere that's more empathic and more loving, even if you don't know anybody. So I'm not presenting empathy as just a nice thing to do. I'm presenting it as a healing force inside of yourself. And if you're interested in your own healing, you have to honestly look at, are you hard on yourself? Do you beat yourself up? Do you have obsessive thoughts? Are you unable to let go of grudges? Are you feeling that you're not meeting your potential because you feel so tired and heavy? All of this could be related to empathy as the missing piece.
Wow.
And so that's why I'm presenting this book, and it's for everybody who's interested in using empathy as an energy, a healing energy, not just a good idea or you're being nice, but it's a commitment to your own life. It's something you do as a lifelong path. And so I wanted to divide the book into empathy for yourself, empathy to improve your relationships, and then empathy for the world, to find a way to better it, even though it might seem impossible to the mind, because I make the distinction between the linear mind and logic, which doesn't want to have anything to do with empathy usually, and the heart, which wants to gravitate towards empathy and share that with people. And so you have to know that your mind, as you're going on this healing exploration, your mind might say, why are you doing this? Why would you want to let go of a resentment? Why would you want to have empathy for the person who betrayed you? What does that mean exactly? So, I answer all those questions. I get into the nitty-gritty of what that exactly does mean, because the short answer of why you want to have empathy for someone you might not like, or somebody who hurt you, or someone you might not believe as they do, is because you want to find empathy for their wounds and their suffering. That's what I'm asking you to do. And the reason that that's important is it'll free you from them. They're not going to be hanging around your energy field. You're not going to be talking about them in 20 years, the same old stories. You're going to be able to, if you feel for somebody's pain and wound, not what they did to you. So I'm sure whatever they did was horrible, and I believe you, but that's not going to serve any of us by holding on to those kind of things, even if we are right, because we want to have, especially as we age, you want to have a healthy, vibrant, light spirited body. We don't want to have like all this stuff attached to us, from 30 years ago. So it's your choice, but empathy is one way to keep your energy field light, to keep your heart open to new things and not just blinded by the past. And it's an everyday practice. I have an empathy in action section for every day. This is how I can do it today. This may be why I don't want to do it today, but I can do it if I want. So it's about elevating your energy field, making your relationship with your spouse better. I could guarantee you, if you have empathy for your spouse, this is going to go a long ways. I mean, just listening without saying anything even, and having a loving look in your eye instead of interrupting and defending. How do you empathically listen? There's a chapter on that. So it applies to everything. And I personally find it very exciting to do this exploration.
Wow. Dr. Judith Orloff, that was a lot to uncover in so many layers, so many points stuck out that I know my viewers will certainly, really take in. I just had a question though, with so much of what you said and was just so beautifully put. Now, empathy, you said, is something that is a superpower, you would say, but it also starts within, not towards other people. That's something that you would agree with?
It's better if it starts within, because if you're beating yourself up and not having empathy for yourself, but you're having empathy for other people, there's an imbalance there. And it's, I say that's human. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with fellow therapists over the years, and we say it's so much easier to help our patients than ourselves. And
Right.
that's just easier. But the task at hand is to start with yourself so you can heal, first of all, and then you can bring that energy into your work with patients or into your relationships. You're not like beating yourself up as you're trying to have empathy for somebody else. And that's a very common thing, is codependent giving. You're, doing a job on yourself, and yet you're trying to help somebody else. And that's not a good pattern to get into.
No. So the foundation of empathy has to be strong and solid to start within. It's not a compensation thing where you're bypassing your own stuff to just kind of feel better about yourself by helping others vicariously through them. It starts within.
Yes, yes, it's not bypassing yourself.
Mm,
The genius of empathy doesn't mean bypassing yourself. You're part of this equation here, a big part, the central part. You're the heart that's generating all this. So
mm,
you're the central hub. Everyone who's listening, you're important. You're the beginning of the energy and empathy cycle. So just know that who you are and how you treat yourself makes a huge difference in everything else. So you start with yourself, and just know that your body hears everything that you say. So if you say something mean to it about why aren't you healing faster? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I'm to this, I'm to that. The poor body gets discombobulated, and it doesn't make for an empathic, clear energy.
wow. So what's and certainly in the mental health field and out there throughout the world, we're hearing mindfulness thrown out everywhere in the supermarket section. It's become a household word rather. Um,
Well,
what's in world two, a mindful universe, right? Is there a relationship of empathy with mindfulness? Would you say that those two coincide, and if so, how?
yeah, I hope empathy gets to be spread into households as much as mindfulness is. That's a beautiful word to be spread everywhere. Spread the word. You want that word to be used a lot. You want to come together through this. And it's really important to be able to have these commonalities and common values, with what's important to you.
Mm,
There comes a point in life, I mean, it really is at any age, but you really must decide what's important to you. Is it empathy? Is it love? Is it connecting to nature? Is it opening your heart and your sensitivities, and also developing your mind? And what is it? What's important to you? It's important to think about that. So I invite you in the book to begin with that. What's really important, and what code do you want to live by? And it's a really important question to ask yourself now, because if you don't know what code you want to live by, you look at the world, you're going to just be, confused and tired. And many of the empath patients that I have, those who are super sensitive, I'm also an empath and a psychiatrist, but they just are, a lot of them, unfortunately, are withdrawing into their own homes with their animals. And it's not like they've officially given up, but it just becomes so hard to be out there, unless you learn how to protect yourself, and unless you really know the code you want to live by and have a belief in that, that will keep you strong.
mm. But what I love about your work is it's groundbreaking, it's innovative, it's always been ahead of its times, but it speaks to each moment. And I think right now, obviously, we discussed earlier in our dialogue about everything, without pointing fingers at what's going on, there's a lot of divisiveness. But beyond that, the technological age and social media, which has kind of rewired our emotions to be very trendy, to focus on the next thing, to focus on what can I do to get ahead and more followers. And so your discussion of empathy, I think, is exactly what people need, which is stillness, which is awareness, which is the ability to feel others and not just be so egocentrically focused on yourself, your numbers, and what's next. I think it's a beautiful position for readers to really alter the trajectory of their lives. Would you say that that's true as well?
Um, yes, and no, because I think, people who want to get ahead and they have passion for their work, I'm all for that.
Sure.
I think that's a wonderful thing. I just think that if you want to do that, I think
Mm,
one basic human fact you need to know is that what people basically want is to be seen, to be heard, to be empathized
mm,
with, and to be valued. And so if you incorporate all those values in your social media, people are going to flock to you and they're going to love being with you and they're going to love your numbers will add up. And so I don't see anything wrong with that if you go about it in a way of attracting
mm.
through these common values. Then you have a community of God knows how much who are all wanting to be empathic, but maybe are too hurt or don't know how. And there you go. You have your big community. So I think that's
Yes, the foundation is key, as you said. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, let me ask you, I know you discussed that you're personally an empath and an intuitive as well. What's would you say is the different levels of empathy, and how does it distinguish itself between being an empath, would you say?
well, empathy is more the umbrella term. And in the genius of empathy, I wanted to present the whole thing.
Mm,
And in the past, I've written about empaths because it's so important to identify yourself. If you are an empath is a very intense form of empathy where you don't have the same filters that other people have. And so you tend to be a sponge that absorbs everything.
mm,
You go out to the market and suddenly you're absorbing things. So you go anywhere, you can feel things, and you might be, feeling the pain of everybody, and that in terms of healthy empathy, that isn't what we want to do. We don't want to feel everyone's pain. You won't have any longevity with your empathy. You'll just be tired all the time.
mm,
You want to be able, having empathy doesn't mean you're on call 100% of the time for everybody.
mm,
It just doesn't mean that. It means that you're able to do what you can at the same time as taking good care of yourself. And an empath, to take good care of themselves, they need to learn how to set boundaries, which I talk about in the book. They need to learn how to set protection uh, shields around you. You need to know how to say no, a positive no to people. And you need to kind of grow up a little bit and get ready for the fact that you might have to disappoint people sometimes. This is something that empaths terrible time with. They don't want to disappoint anybody. But I'm telling you, as an adult, you will at times when you set a limit that isn't, in sync with what somebody wants you to do, they'll be disappointed. So they'll live through it and you'll live through it and it'll be great, because then, I mean, they have all kinds of respect for you. And if you want people to treat you well as an empath, then you have to learn how to say a positive no. You don't say it nasty or snitty. You say it, sorry, I wish I could. I wish I could, but I just don't have it in me right now. I'm going to go home and go to sleep, and
Is
anyways, you have to
is
learn how to take care of yourself, is my point. If you're
uh,
an empath, and those who aren't necessarily an empath, but have empathy, you still have to learn how to set boundaries and limits and not go overboard with, let's say, if you go through an underpass with the unhoused, you're tuning in to what you're perceiving as suffering there. Whatever suffering is there, your body is absorbing it because that's what you do and that's what you feel good about. But I don't suggest that at all. First of all, it's none of your business. Everybody has their own path. And if you want to do something helpful, instead of absorb their misery, send them some love from your heart. You're
mm,
going to that underpass, send them some love. It'll get there. Do something useful. But empaths are well-meaning, but they think that often that absorbing all the angst of the world is going to is their job description.
Mm.
Not if you want to be a healthy empath who wants to survive the years and become a beautiful, radiant being.
Wow. Do you say observe over absorb for empaths? Is that your recommendation?
It's for empaths, and it's also for those with the beautiful power of empathy who aren't necessarily empaths.
Mm,
And it just means it's not your job to sponge up the
mm,
negativity and angst and suffering of the world. But you might have an impulse to want to do it, because that's what empaths do.
mm.
I mean, they automatically do it. As a child, I didn't know what an empath was, and I would immediately attune to people with suffering, and it would come right back at me because I'm touching them. I knew how to, I don't know how I knew as a child, but I knew how to reach them and touch them. And then I take it home with me. And so I'd end up feeling what they were feeling. And it was a big mess for a young girl to be doing that.
Wow.
It doesn't serve me. So, I'm really into teaching children some of the techniques if they're sensitive or empaths, how not to do that. Just watch it. If you want to do it, I understand, but it's not a good thing for you or the other person. So we need to have a lot of guides. We need to have a lot of wise mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers and teachers. We need education, and that will help the situation a lot.
Information is vital. It has such a correlation with our behaviors and our outlooks. I'm wondering for you, um, what's it like for you when maybe you're with a client or you have an email where someone says, "Oh my God, you know, all this time I thought, I've been told I was weak, I was sensitive, like suck it up, move on, and here I am, and this is actually a thing." Like, has that come to you throughout the years where now people, instead of feeling very pathologized or very weakened, all of a sudden they feel empowered? Like, what's that like for you to observe? Have you seen that, throughout the years a lot?
Oh, I've had hundreds, maybe thousands of emails like that. And I'm happy for everyone. Every time I get an email like that, it makes me happy, as I know what that means to be liberated like that. And you might not know exactly where you're going on your path as an empath, but it's a beautiful journey.
Yeah,
And if you get the proper guidance, it will lead to a happy life, and a
yeah.
fulfilled, connected life. Because one thing about empathy, and I say the genius is, I really think it's the genius
Mm,
superpower, ability that we can tap into. The genius, it really is. That's not hyperbole. To be able to tap into it as we grow, and we develop more light around us when we do this, and we become clearer and lighter, and yes, more understanding and more tolerant. And part of adjusting to empathy and opening to it is dealing with our emotional triggers too. And this is true for empaths or non-empaths, is that if you're triggered by somebody, if they get you really mad, or if they insult you, or whatever they're going to do, that's a trigger. And you have to look back on your past, as opposed to a trigger is that intense dagger in the GI tract feeling.
mm,
But just being annoyed is something different. Being annoyed is perfectly fine. You could be annoyed, or it could be hurt you, but it won't be, ugh.
mm.
That's an emotional trigger. And so, you need to look at in your past, were you raised by narcissists or sociopaths? Did you have any nurturing of your sensitivities as you were growing up, or were you alone? And like I was, and I felt ashamed of my abilities, and I felt like there was something wrong with me.
Wow.
And, it's just, part of a common pattern that many empaths go through if they have no support. So you have to ask yourself all that, and those feelings will result in your emotional triggers later on. Like if somebody shames me, well, it's not so much true anymore, but someone shames me about, oh, you're overly sensitive. When I was a child, I would become nothing. I would become invisible. I would just not, just look at it as a terrible criticism of me, and I didn't know how to fix it. And so, now if someone sent that, I just think I'd laugh or something, given all the conversations I've had about this. Not like it's funny, but it's like, are you kidding me? No, that's crazy, but they don't see it as crazy. They're a lot of just, part of the teaching in this book is to be super tolerant of people, particularly if they don't know anything of what you're talking about. And so you have to educate them very gently. I mean, I know a lot of people who have cognitive empathy. They don't have emotional empathy. They don't have spiritual or intuitive empathy. They can feel for you with their mind, and I think that's fine. If that's what they want, if that's the good they can do, I say accept them as is. Don't try and make them into something else. I think cognitive empathy is beautiful, but whatever you have, you want to develop it. And that's what this book is about. It's not like it just develop on its own. You're going to need a little bit of guidance in terms of how to approach the issue of being drained by empathy, because that's always the argument. I saw an article in the New York Times recently about, how, well, if we're empathic, we're just going to get compassion fatigue and burn out. That was the argument, but that's not sure if you don't have any tools. If you don't have the tools I'm talking about, you're going to burn out, of course. But they leave out that important part. They just make the comment. It was interesting to me. It's a good writer, but he didn't present any solutions.
I guess he didn't read your books yet. He didn't know that missing
I don't
link
think
of
so.
how to be, there's, as you said, there's levels to empathy, there's levels to empath, but when it's handled in a very skillful way and you're able to apply those tools, wow, that could be transformed to be a very empowered empath who makes quite a difference in the world and is able to regenerate, a lot of their compassion instead of being stagnant and just shelling themselves away. When I'm listening to you, I'm just wondering, that little girl that you mentioned, is that a part, would you say, of the work that you do and your purpose, that moment of pain, did that allow you to really expand empathy? Because a lot of people ask, like, what's my purpose? What's the purpose behind pain? And could you say some degree that some part of pain is for us to develop bridges of empathy and understanding, or maybe not? I'm curious.
Well, it's sometimes not just about myself, or yourself, because I think a good reason why I went through all this and suffered, the shame of this is to help others later on in life.
Sure.
And so sometimes you do go through things that don't feel so great, but then later on, because you get what they're feeling, which is so important, it's such an important part of empathy, you can help so many people. And so sometimes the healer instinct begins with difficulty, with the parental situation or alcohol or drugs or narcissists, whatever challenges you have, it can help you help others later on, which I think service is one of the most important things ever, to be of service, whatever the scale. Because I know people go, oh, I have to help the world. And you really don't. You just help whoever comes in front of you, if you can. And if you don't have it in you, if you need to rest, if you need to sleep, you say no. And the no is very important.
The boundaries, but yes, thinking globally by acting locally, as they say, and just kind of focusing on your surroundings. And we just, like you said, we have a superpower and we just don't know the impact that we have on the world around us. That gentle smile that we may have, or just saying hi to someone, we don't know, what that will mean to someone. And that's a beautiful thing, the ripple effect of our lives and coming from a genuine good place. But yes, like you said, having that boundaries. I have a question. There's always skeptics. I mean, I'm a near-death experiencer and people have all kinds of skepticism. I'm personally in the mental health field, but I'm a big brain guy. So for, maybe a viewer who's saying, oh, this isn't real, this isn't tangible, what would you say is the real neuroscientific explanation for empathy? Like, how does that work? as it relates to the brain? Like what part of the brain relates itself to empathy?
Yes, well, there's a section in the Genius of Empathy on the neuroscience of empathy, which is fascinating.
Mm,
And it starts with the mirror neuron system in the brain, but the mirror neurons are the compassion neurons.
mm,
And it's not that in empaths, they're going super speed. They're
mm,
very fast compared to other people because they're hyperactive. Whereas if you look at a narcissist who has empathy deficient disorder, and there's a
mm,
chapter in the book on that, their mirror neurons are not doing much because they're not able to feel empathy, which is something many empathic people need to get,
mm,
because we're exposed to a lot of narcissists in our world today. And if
mhm,
they're full narcissists, they are not capable of empathizing with you. And I hope you get that. And it's hard to get. And many empaths think, how could that be possible? If I just love them, they're going to get better. And,
mm,
the final words 25 years later, I'm helping dig them out of their relationship,
mm,
So it's a really important point to get with empathy, that some people have a lot and they have the mirror neurons system activated and the oxytocin, the bonding hormone activated with
mm,
empathy, or dopamine activated with empathy, which is the pleasure hormone. It makes you
mm,
feel good, dopamine.
mhm.
And then there's the wonderful Mother Teresa effect, which is just mind blowing to me every time I think about it. And what this is they've done studies on what happens when you witness an empathic act. Let's say you're walking down the street and somebody does something really beautiful for another human being, and you're the witness. If they were to measure your saliva at that point, your immunity would go up, your stress hormones would go down, and all these positive biochemical changes would happen simply by witnessing a beautiful act of empathy.
Wow.
So I know, isn't that powerful? It's like you're watching it, but it's changing you. And it's so right. I just get a chill when I just tell that story because it's so right. And it's so beautiful that happens with humans, and that's who we are. That's our basic nature.
It shows you that when you're in alignment of your nature, you tend to feel better and, everything aligns within yourself. It's almost as like, it's why we're here. We're here to really experience that, feel that. And that's a deep part of ourselves. Now, outside the narcissist, I'm not necessarily talking about that, but for people who might, just feel compassion fatigue or may feel that they might maybe as a child they were more empathic, but as they get older, who knows, maybe they're in their heads more, they're disconnected. Is there a simple exercise that you feel, or a couple exercises that you feel that people could use to expand this superpower, to be able to feel more empathy in a healthy way? Or has that ship sailed, and once the brain is at a certain point, that's just kind of it?
Well, the ship has never sailed.
Right, right.
You could jump on any time. It doesn't matter. It can be your last 10 minutes of life. Jump on. It's a good ship. You want to be on it, particularly then.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, you could jump on the empathy ship anytime you want. And it's of course you're going to feel compassion fatigue. This world is just depleting
Mm,
and disappointing, and human nature has shown many sides that many of us hadn't seen before, but we must accept. And so you're going to feel compassion fatigue. And if you do, that's okay. Don't
mm,
have compassion for anyone. Just stop, listen to your body. Just give yourself a compassion break
mm,
so that you can, unless you want to just show compassion for yourself, that's fine, because you want to build up your neurochemicals. You want to get your parasympathetic nervous system with the vagus nerve fired up,
mm,
which helps to soothe you and calm you, um, by stopping, by taking some alone time, by taking a bath, by walking in nature. by stopping obsessing about all the pain in the world and just begin one step at a time to focus on yourself. Then you can replenish those with compassion fatigue. You have to stop. I mean, it's hard, I know, because people are obsessed with being compassionate at the expense of their own well-being. And it's time to replenish yourself. So I would start with the part in the book that is self-empathy, as that's, if you have compassion fatigue, you want to start building up your energy again through self-empathy. And so that's really important. And let's say you're becoming less connected to yourself as the years go on, and you're missing certain things you used to have. It's important to immediately build a sacred space at home and have a table, candles, incense, maybe a bowl of fruit and some flowers or whatever you think is beautiful, or have some spiritual objects there. So immediately develop a vortex in your home that you can go to start building up your connection and spiritual energy again. That's the first thing to do, is build that altar or that sacred space. And then you put a nice cushion in front of it, you get comfortable, and you make a commitment to sit there with yourself, to find yourself when you've been lost. You know, it means sitting, it means putting your hand on your heart. The way you find yourself again is through empathy and through the heart. That's your answer. But you can't find yourself again by staying in the mind and overthinking. And there's a big section in the book on how to stop overthinking, because that's an enemy of empathy. Because the mind can be a torture chamber, and the more you're in it and the years go by, the more detached you might become from your soul. And mind won't bring you to your soul, but the heart will. So this journey is about reconnecting with yourself and your heart. And let's say you're not feeling it at first. Let's say you're doing everything I'm suggesting, you're not feeling it. Keep doing it, you know, and also go take a walk out in nature. That will help you to connect to yourself. And if you can't stop thinking, you might have a mantra such as "Let it be," or gratitude, or "I am clear," "I am relaxed." Do something to distract the mind so that you have something else to focus on until you get used to coming back to your heart again, which is connecting to your soul and your spirit, which is the holy quest.
I love it. As I say, the mind and the heart, just a couple inches apart, but they could be thousands of miles away. So it's that being that bridge in the heart, really is that doorway, to love, to connectivity, to home. So I love every word that you said. And I think we could also emphasize that guilt is something that people have to overcome, that they're not important, that they have to put everyone before them, that it's not good to, you're being selfish if you splurge on yourself or take care of yourself. So overcoming a lot of family and cultural myths that we're not important, self-care is not, in order to make those changes. Well, Dr. Judith Orloff, we've certainly, have been able to unload on empathy, empaths, your book, so much, micro and macro messages of the day. You're a woman with so much wisdom and insight. Is there anything else that is coming to your mind, at this time before, this wonderful conversation concludes at this moment? Like any messages that you're tuned into that you feel people, could hear that we didn't get into?
I want people to know that there is hope and that you can start over again at any point. The beginner's mind, you can start everything, forget what you've learned, start again if you're not on the right path. If you feel lost, if you can't find yourself, just start again and try and live in the moment as much as possible, and try and allow yourself to feel the power of empathy. And it's a feeling experience. When you sit at your sacred space, I want you to feel what it is that we're talking about. It's an energy. Feel what it is. Don't think what it is, but feel it. And that will be your shining light, it will be your direction finder. So the feeling and the heart, and have fun with it.
Feelings promote healings, as I say, right? So I do love that. Thank you so much for all you said. I know my viewers will love every word and really take in a lot of this. And what I like most about is that it's putting the tire onto the pavement. This isn't just words that we're throwing out there. It's practical. It speaks to the moment, it's translatable to the times. So I really do thank you for being a champion and a harbinger of good information and good news. Now, Dr. Judith, where could people find you, as well as your many books? Like, where is the best place, that people could find you? Should they be interested in any upcoming, events or workshops? Where is the best place to find you, as well as, to purchase your many books, including The Genius of Empathy?
Oh, yeah. So my website, which is Judith Orloff, ORLOFF.com. And for the Genius of Empathy, for the next month or two, there's a wonderful offer where when you get the book, you get a free empathy ebook and free empathy webinars that I offer. And it's just, you can go on my website, or I can give you the link to that offer for your audience if they want it. And I'm on a book tour, so look at my schedule on my website. And I have, if you're in Venice, California, by any chance, or in LA, come to my book launch at Mystic Journey Books on Main Street in Santa Monica on April 13th, which is
Wow.
going to be much fun.
Right, the week of your release. I love that. So viewers, if you're in that area, do check it out and check out, Dr. Judith's upcoming events, as well as follow her on social media, Facebook, Instagram, I believe, and keep in touch with her. She's has a lot of information to share, and certainly a tremendous light worker, and someone who I consider at least an international treasure, as well as many. Well, Dr. Judith Orloff, we thank you so much for your generous time and, yet another book, which I know will help out so many. And yes, endorsed and written forward by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the champion of compassion. So that's a perfect match as well. And I know it speaks volumes to your incredible work, all dealing with compassion. So thank you for being my guest here. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh, thank you. It was wonderful being on.
Well, thank you for listening to a brilliant conversation with Dr. Judith Orloff. I know I personally learned a lot, and I know our conversation will help out many viewers, and it truly speaks to the moment and the times of what the world needs, which is love, empathy, and compassion at this time. All things that Dr. Judith Orloff has really implemented throughout the course of her entire career, spanning several decades. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll catch you here next week on the Wisdom Jacobs Ladder. Hit that subscribe button, bell notification icon to stay up to date on a growing community with more great guests coming your way each and every week. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you here next week.